there is a silent problem that many older adults feel but often struggle to explain. It is that sense that memory no longer responds the same way, that something inside the brain is starting to fade. It does not hurt and it gives no clear warning, but little by little it dims mental clarity. Today I want to talk to you about that problem and, more importantly, about how one vitamin can help you protect your memory before that silence moves forward. I am Dr. Gabriel Mina, and I welcome you to my channel. Here we talk about holistic health, longevity, and natural, very simple habits that help you maintain physical, mental, and emotional balance. So pay close attention and share this information with your family and friends to help them improve their health. We upload new videos every day, so subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date. Let's get started. Very often I see people who come to my office saying they forget simple words, lose track of conversations, or walk around the house looking for something without remembering what it was. That mental fog does not appear out of nowhere. Behind it, many times, there is a small, almost invisible deficiency with a huge impact on how the brain functions. That deficiency has a name, even though it rarely takes center stage in conversations. It is a vitamin that is essential for neurons to keep communicating, for memory to withstand the passage of time, and for the mind not to slowly shut down. I am talking about vitamin B12, a silent ally of your brain. As a physician, I have seen cases that leave a lasting impression. I remember a patient in his early 60s who came in worried because he felt he was no longer the same person. He forgot appointments, felt mentally slow, and began to withdraw socially. His tests showed low levels of vitamin B12. By correcting that deficiency in time, not only did his energy improve, but he also regained mental clarity and confidence. Stories like this happen more often than you might think. Memory does not work like a file stored in a drawer inside the brain. It is not something static. Memory is alive. It depends on millions of connections between neurons, on electrical signals traveling from one cell to another, and on a very delicate balance of nutrients. For this system to work properly, the brain needs energy, oxygen, and specific substances that keep its internal machinery running. Vitamin B12 plays a central role in this process. It is involved in the formation of myelin, a protective layer that surrounds nerve fibers and allows electrical impulses to travel quickly and accurately. When that protection fails, signals become slow and distorted, and the brain starts to malfunction, much like a damaged electrical network. But B12 does not stop there. It is also essential for producing neurotransmitters, regulating the energy of nerve cells, and protecting the genetic material of neurons. When B12 is lacking, a substance called homocysteine increases, and in excess it damages blood vessels and brain tissue, promotes inflammation, and accelerates cognitive decline. What is most concerning is that this deficiency can progress for years without obvious symptoms. Many people attribute mental fatigue, mild confusion, or difficulty concentrating to stress or simply to aging. Meanwhile, important neural connections are already being lost. That is why it is so important to talk about this today. Detecting a vitamin B12 deficiency early can make the difference between preserving memory and losing it irreversibly. Vitamin B12, also known as cobalamin, is not produced by the body. It must be obtained through food, mainly from animal sources such as meat, fish, eggs, and dairy products. However, another common problem appears here. Even when a person consumes these foods, absorbing vitamin B12 is a delicate process. It depends on stomach acid, a protein called intrinsic factor, and proper intestinal function. With age, certain medications, digestive problems, or surgeries, this process can fail. This explains why many people over the age of 50 have low B12 levels without knowing it. I see this frequently in my practice. And what is most serious is that many routine blood tests do not include this vitamin, so the problem can go unnoticed for years. When B12 levels drop, the brain begins to send warning signs. Mental slowness appears, concentration becomes harder, and recent memory lapses become more frequent. Keys, names, and conversations are easily forgotten. At first it may seem normal, but when it keeps happening, it is a warning sign that should not be ignored. In addition to affecting memory, a lack of B12 can alter mood, causing sadness, anxiety, irritability, tingling in the hands and feet, balance problems, and even anemia. All of these symptoms share a common origin: the absence of an essential nutrient. Many people believe that all memory loss is Alzheimer's or that cognitive decline is inevitable. And that is not always true. There are situations in which a vitamin B12 deficiency worsens or mimics dementia, and when it is detected in time, correcting it can slow down and even improve part of the damage. This is not about miracle promises, but about prevention and responsible brain care. And that is what we will continue to explore in this video. If this topic feels familiar to you or you know someone going through something similar, I invite you right now to subscribe to the channel and share this content. It can be very helpful for you or for someone you care about. In the next section, we will go deeper so you can understand how to protect your memory in a practical and conscious way. If you feel that your memory is slowing down, that thinking takes more effort than before, or that your mood is no longer the same, it is important for you to know that this problem may have an explanation and, in many cases, a concrete solution. Today we continue talking about how vitamin B12 can make a real difference in your brain health and in the way you age. Science has shown a clear relationship between vitamin B12 deficiency and a higher risk of cognitive decline, dementia, and depression. There is also strong evidence that correcting this deficiency, especially when B12 is combined with other B-complex vitamins such as B6 and folic acid, helps reduce homocysteine levels, improves mental function, and protects the brain from progressive deterioration. This is not a story of magical solutions or quick fixes. It is knowledge supported by decades of serious research, and it deserves to be taken seriously by anyone who wants to protect their memory over the years. When B12 is lacking, brain damage does not happen overnight. It is a slow, constant, and silent process. Neurons need myelin to transmit signals properly, and that myelin depends directly on vitamin B12. When B12 is scarce, myelin begins to break down, nerves are left unprotected, and information no longer flows as it should. It is similar to what happens when the insulation on electrical wires wears away. Interference appears, failures increase in the brain, and eventually the system stops working properly. Thinking, memory problems, clumsiness in movement, and mental confusion. And the hardest part is that if this situation continues without correction, some of the damage can become permanent. Neurons that are lost are not easily replaced, and broken connections are not always rebuilt. I have seen this reality up close. I remember a patient who came to my office with deep sadness and constant forgetfulness. Her family feared dementia. When we evaluated her case, we found a significant vitamin B12 deficiency. After starting proper treatment, her mood improved, much of her mental clarity returned, and she became actively engaged in her family life again. It does not happen in every case, but it happens often enough that it should never be ignored. That is why it is so important to evaluate vitamin B12 levels in anyone who shows cognitive changes, especially if they are over 50 years old, follow a restrictive diet, take certain medications, or have digestive problems. The body has a remarkable ability to recover when it receives what it needs at the right time. This leads to a key question: how can you know if you have a vitamin B12 deficiency? Routine tests usually measure glucose, cholesterol, or a basic blood count, but they rarely include B12. And when it is measured, the values considered normal can be misleading because a person may fall within the reference range and still have symptoms. For this reason, a thorough evaluation should include other markers, such as homocysteine or methylmalonic acid, which rise when B12 is not functioning properly in the body. It is also essential for health professionals to learn to recognize the signs of this deficiency and not attribute everything to aging or stress without investigating further. The good news is that vitamin B12 supplementation is safe, simple, and effective. It can be taken orally or given by injection, depending on the degree of deficiency and each person's ability to absorb it. In more severe cases, injections allow the vitamin to reach the bloodstream directly, and improvements can be noticed within a few weeks. Many people experience better energy, mood, and mental clarity in a relatively short time. This does not mean that all symptoms disappear immediately, but it does indicate that the body is beginning to recover and that the brain is once again receiving what it needs to function properly. This is where prevention plays a fundamental role. It is not about waiting for memory to fail, but about making sure that vitamin B12 levels remain adequate over time. Even people who consume animal-based foods can develop a deficiency, especially as the years go by. For vegetarians and vegans, supplementation is not a secondary option, it is a necessity. And for anyone over the age of 50, or who takes medications that interfere with absorption, regularly checking B12 levels should be part of routine healthcare. When we think about conditions such as dementia or Alzheimer's disease, we often believe that everything is determined by genetics or by an unavoidable destiny. But that is not always the case. There are factors we can modify, decisions we can make, and actions that help protect the brain and keep memory alive for longer. Vitamin B12 is one of those tools. It is not the only one, of course. Brain health also depends on movement, rest, stress management, balanced nutrition, and maintaining active social and mental connections. But B12 holds a special place because its absence can cause deep damage, and correcting it can change the course. There is something deeply human in understanding that such a small substance can make the difference between remembering and forgetting, between feeling present or feeling lost. Because memory is not just a collection of data. Memory is who we are. It is the link to our history, to the people we love, to our identity. When memory deteriorates, it is not only the brain that suffers. The person suffers, their family suffers, and so does their environment. That is why knowing that part of this suffering can be prevented, that there is something concrete we can do, is not only a relief, it is also a responsibility. And we must not forget another important aspect. Vitamin B12 deficiency can also affect emotional well-being. It can cause sadness with no apparent reason, irritability, or anxiety. This happens because B12 is necessary for the production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine, which regulate mood and motivation. When these chemical messengers are not produced in adequate amounts, emotional balance is disrupted, and a person may be treated for years for depression or anxiety without addressing the real cause. Understanding this not only avoids unnecessary treatments, it also opens the door to hope, because it means that suffering is not always inevitable and that, in many cases, there is a real solution. In the next section, we will continue to go deeper to help you understand how to care for your memory in a conscious, practical, and responsible way. Memory loss, mental confusion, and that feeling of not being as sharp as before are not simply an inevitable part of aging. Today you know that there are concrete actions you can take to protect your mind, and one of them is caring for key nutrients such as vitamin B12. Understanding this completely changes the way we look at aging and brain health. This leads us to think about a more attentive and more comprehensive kind of medicine, one that does not see the body and the mind as separate things, but as a deeply connected whole. It is not just about silencing symptoms, but about understanding root causes and the relationship between nutrition, the brain, emotions, and behavior. And when we talk about brain nutrition, there is one fundamental fact we cannot forget. The brain is a very demanding organ. Although it represents only about 2% of total body weight, it consumes nearly 20% of all the energy we produce. It needs glucose, oxygen, healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals. Each of these nutrients has a specific function that cannot be replaced by another. Vitamin B12 is one of those irreplaceable nutrients. Without it, the brain simply cannot function as it should. What is surprising is that a B12 deficiency can develop silently over many years. The body stores reserves in the liver that can last a long time. But when those reserves are depleted, decline can appear quickly and dramatically, and it is often mistaken for a primary neurological disease. This is where something crucial comes into play, making the correct diagnosis. The symptoms of B12 deficiency can closely resemble those of other conditions such as Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, diabetic neuropathy, or severe depression. If the physician does not consider measuring B12 levels and does not think of this possibility, the correct diagnosis can be delayed for years. And during that time, the damage continues. Neurons keep suffering, connections are lost, and when the cause is finally identified, it may be too late to reverse everything. That is why talking about the importance of B12 is not just a medical or public health issue, it is an act of compassion and respect for human dignity. No one should suffer because something so simple to evaluate was not detected in time. There is another very important point I want to share with you: the relationship between B12 and brain inflammation. Today we know that neuroinflammation is one of the central factors in neurodegenerative diseases. When the brain is inflamed, the support cells of neurons become overactive and begin releasing substances that ultimately damage the neurons themselves. Vitamin B12 deficiency contributes to this inflammatory process, not only because of increased homocysteine, but also because it affects cell membranes, mitochondrial function, and the brain's ability to defend itself against oxidative stress. It is as if the brain, without B12, were left unprotected and vulnerable on many fronts at the same time. So what do we do with all this information? We use it to make more conscious decisions. Decisions about what we eat, about the tests we request, and about how we care for our body and our mind. We stop thinking that aging is automatically synonymous with loss and deterioration, and we begin to see it as a process that can be accompanied by clarity, presence, and wisdom if we take care of the pillars of brain health. B12 is one of those pillars. It is not the only one, but it is essential. And the science behind this vitamin teaches us something very profound about what health truly is. Health is not simply the absence of disease. Health is vitality, adaptability, and resilience. And brain vitality often depends on simple, accessible things: proper nutrients, movement, rest, human connection, and moments of calm and reflection. When we neglect these things, when we live at a frantic pace, eat poorly, sleep too little, and stop caring for our relationships, the brain accumulates small damages over time. One day we realize that we are no longer as present, as clear, or as connected. Sometimes it may be too late to reverse everything, but it is never too late to begin caring. Many times we think that taking care of ourselves requires huge and complicated changes. And that is not always true. Sometimes caring for yourself is as simple as checking the level of a vitamin. Sometimes it is taking a supplement consistently. Sometimes it is listening to your body instead of ignoring the signals and pushing forward as if nothing were happening. Modern neuroscience reminds us of something essential. The brain is plastic, it can adapt and recover, but it is also fragile and needs specific care. That care is not a luxury or an option, it is essential. It can make the difference between a lucid old age and an old age trapped in forgetfulness. There is also a spiritual dimension to all of this. Understanding that memory and clarity depend on biological processes does not diminish what is human. On the contrary, it reminds us that mind and body are deeply united. Caring for the body is also caring for the soul. The ability to be here, conscious and present, is not only a psychological or philosophical matter, it is also biological. We cannot control everything in life. We cannot guarantee that we will never get sick or that we will never forget something. But we can make decisions that increase our chances of aging well, of preserving our memory, and of maintaining our identity. And one of those decisions is making sure that our brain has the vitamin B12 it needs. It may seem like a small, almost trivial choice, but its consequences can be enormous. It can mark the difference between remembering and forgetting, between being present or absent, between truly living or simply passing through life. The history of medicine is full of examples like this. Simple discoveries that transformed millions of lives. Understanding that scurvy was caused by a lack of vitamin C, that pellagra was due to niacin deficiency, that pernicious anemia was related to B12 deficiency. These were not complex breakthroughs, but they were profoundly transformative. Even today, there are people who are losing their memory and being diagnosed with dementia when what they actually have is a vitamin B12 deficiency. That is painful, but it is also an opportunity. It means that there is something we can do, that we are not completely powerless, and that we do not have to accept decline as an inevitable fate. As a physician, Dr. Gabriel Mina, I have seen cases that deeply marked me. I remember a patient in his early 60s who came in worried because he could no longer recognize dates or remember recent conversations. His family feared early dementia. After evaluating his habits and ordering the appropriate tests, we found a significant B12 deficiency. With proper treatment, within a few months he regained clarity, confidence, and peace of mind. Stories like this remind us that it is worth looking beyond the obvious. Knowledge does not have to be complicated or inaccessible. It is here, within everyone's reach, waiting for us to pay attention and to care for ourselves with the same tenderness we would show someone we love. Asking yourself today what your body needs and what your mind needs is an act of self-care. Perhaps the answer is as simple as checking your B12 levels, adjusting your diet, or starting a supplement. Perhaps it is simply pausing and listening. The brain is not just an organ. It is the place from which you live, feel, love, and remember. Caring for it is an act of respect for your life and your story. And knowing that there are things you can do to protect your memory is, in itself, a form of care and hope. If this message brings you clarity and you feel it could help someone you love, I invite you to share it. Subscribe to the channel, leave your comment, and turn on notifications so you do not miss any of our videos, because we publish new content every day with your well-being in mind. And before we close, let us take a moment to thank God for life, for the opportunity to learn, and for the possibility of taking better care of our health and our mind. On this channel, Dr. Gabriel Mina's channel, we are deeply grateful to be able to walk alongside you, to help improve habits, and to protect something as valuable as your memory. Tomorrow a new video will be waiting for you, with practical and approachable information. Thank you for being here, for trusting us, and for being part of this community where your health and your life truly matter.